Do 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 do. All right, everyone, warm up those brains. It's time for the Get More Smarter podcast. This is episode 240. I'm Jason Bain.
I'm Ian Silveri. This week on the Get More Smarter podcast, another violent anti-Semitic attack hits the USA, this time very close to home, as Colorado Republicans try to politicize the tragedy to gin up anger against immigrants, and Colorado Democrats stand in solidarity with the Jewish community. Thanks. Then, it's the greatest feud ever on the dumbest timeline imaginable. Will Donald Trump deport Elon Musk? Will Elon Musk start a new party to spite Donald Trump? Will both of them get outed in the Epstein files? Will anyone, anywhere, learn anything from any of this? And finally, is it getting crowded in here? Or is it a wave year? As up to 5 legit candidates jump into the pool to take on Gabe-ish Evans in Colorado's 8th congressional district, the AG's race gets a 4th Democratic candidate, and even the bread sandwich draws a primary opponent. Colorado has some ambitious politicians, and one thing we know for sure is that the state's elected leadership will look very different after 2026. But first, in our unofficial series, interviewing as many reporters whose editors don't listen to the show as possible, we've got Tyler Duncan, government reporter for the Greeley Tribune, and some other papers on the show this week to talk about Northern Colorado politics, being a young journalist in the age of AI, and why so many people are moving there despite the, you know what distinguishing feature Greeley has. We don't have to tell you. Take a listen. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Tyler Duncan, the government reporter for the Greeley Tribune. Tyler is responsible for covering state and local politics that affect Greeley and Weld County residents. He graduated 4 years ago with a bachelor's degree in English philosophy from the University of New Mexico. He then went on to graduate from the Denver University Publishing Institute and became a freelance book editor before becoming a reporter. Tyler Duncan, welcome to the Get More Smarter podcast.
Hi, happy to be here.
So, do you have degrees in English and philosophy, or is it just philosophy in the English language?
It's just English philosophy. That's not separated. It's a weird, specific form of philosophy that is just English-based.
Not Australian philosophy?
Russell? Is that like what we're talking about?
Yeah. Basically, yeah. It's a lot of analysis of literature and just like the morals and it's essentially the why the curtains were blue. I majored in that.
I also did. I did continental philosophy myself, so I totally get where you're coming from. So go ahead, Jason. I think you've got our first question.
Let's just start out with the basics. How long have you been covering Greeley and Weld County, and what was it that drew you to local government reporting?
So I've been doing this for almost a year now. I started back in July. I mean, what originally drew me is just, I've always been, it's a difficult thing to say specifically because it's such a combination of things. But I would say in large part what drew me is just the sense of a public service to it, where, there's so many things going on with the government and there's so much information out there about everything that I kind of thought if I had a chance to go in there and make it so that it's easy to understand, because that's the other aspect too, is that a lot of times government stuff gets so complicated and it gets so messy, and I feel I'm pretty good at distilling the core concepts of things and explaining it in a way that might be easier for people to understand. And yeah, I guess what drew me is that I thought I would be good at it.
That's great. And a year in, I'm wondering, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in Greeley, Weld County, or the other places you cover since you started a year ago?
Oh, gosh. I mean, honestly, things have changed, but not drastically, I don't think. I feel like it's basically, once you get past like all the current events and what is currently going on, it's all the same underlying current where government-wise, everyone is doing what they can to make everything better and pushing through projects that are like, we think this will make it better for everyone here. It's just what those things are changes. And so, especially now that we're past election period. Well, I mean, I guess we've got the city election stuff coming up this November. But major election period, things are noticeably more calm, I feel.
Yeah.
How would you say you balance, or what's the breakdown of maybe how much you cover local politics versus legislative politics versus federal stuff? Is it about even, or? is one get
Oh
more?
no, it's heavily based towards local stuff. Mainly, like being Greeley Tribune, I always look to see if something's going on in Greeley first, and then I move to the outside towns like Evans and Windsor. And I mean, if something going on with the county in general, that does take a little bit of precedence. But I don't go into federal too often because one of the guiding sort of principles for me in terms of what I do is that it has to affect the residents directly. Like it has to be connected directly to the county or the city. And so that often results in mostly Gabe Evans. That's really
Right.
that's really where it ends for me. Is like, or some like last week I went on a tour with Senator Hickenlooper of a medical facility here, and that was just because it was in town. And so basically that's where it stops for me in terms of coverage. Is like, is it affecting us directly? Do I have a direct link into something that's going to impact people? So
We had
more often than not.
We had legendary Colorado columnist Mike Litwin on the show last week, and we agreed with him that Colorado's traditional press is better than most states. Do you agree, or do you have thoughts on that?
I mean, I will have some state pride, and I'll say sure, but I haven't analyzed.
Fair enough.
You wrote a great story last week about Weld County getting removed from the federal list of so-called sanctuary, it wasn't cities, sanctuary jurisdictions.
Yes.
Before DHS Secretary Kristi Noem just gave up and deleted the whole thing. The list seemed to be like AI generated or something because the names and cities, or some of them were misspelled and they didn't make sense. What did you come to learn about why Weld ended up being on Weld County ended up being on that list?
So that whole situation, that was a fun day because that really just kind of came at me so fast. I was actually about to end my day. Like I had turned in my articles that I was writing for that day, and my editor's just like, Weld County's on the sanctuary jurisdiction list. Go, 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 go. It's like, huh, huh. And I like started frantically calling everybody. But yeah, to my understanding, I've heard about the AI thing. That makes sense to me. Just because Weld County has just been, I wouldn't say adamantly on the side of not against immigration stuff.
Pretty close.
But they're pretty close. Yeah. They've been pretty strongly against it. And I remember a few months back, I had asked them a question about it, and they were just like, look at our little law thing we did in the code.
Right.
That still stands. We still stand behind that. And so really the AI thing's the only reason I can imagine that it went onto that is just like they've done something about immigration lately onto the list.
Yeah.
So you never got an answer for why?
Nobody gave me an answer for why, not necessarily. But yeah, Delaney Bomar, who is Gabe Evans' press person, and all she told me was that, they were in contact and they got him pretty quickly removed. But nobody seems to know why they were on, and I don't necessarily think once they were off the list, it was a question anymore. I think they're just happy that it was off, and like, all right, that problem fires out.
I mean, it's one of these peculiar things where you have kind of asked the question why they published this list to begin with. Like, what was the purpose of that? And then having got it so wrong, Jason brought up the website in the last episode that we recorded, and they had switched the name of a city and a county in Nebraska. Like, it's just,
Kansas,
it was so, Kansas. Yeah, it was so obviously like wrong. You'd like to think like an intern put it together, but we know that, the White House and the administration loves AI so much. So that was our theory on how that happened. Do you think that's reasonable?
No, yeah, I definitely think that's reasonable. And I think so far with this administration, we do kind of have a little bit of a precedent of that, because there was that memo situation a while back, wasn't there? Because I remember that being another scurry moment where it just came out and everyone was like, what are you doing? What's happening?
We're only 5 months into this, so unfortunately it looks like we've got 3 more years and a half. You covered the 2024 House District 50 race between Ryan Gonzalez, who's the state rep now, and Mary Young, wife of treasurer of the show, Dave Young, and now one of roughly 300 declared candidates for CD8, of course. That was a really, really close race, with Gonzalez winning against Young by only 563 votes. Do you have a sense of why it was so close and what may have put Gonzalez over the top? I mean, weirdly enough, that district had been represented by a Democrat as long as I've been working in Colorado politics. This goes back to 2006 when it was Jim Reesberg. It's always been a close race, but Republicans have never won it. Why do you think it flipped in 2024?
So there's a lot. That's a very nuanced question because there's so many factors that go into why it flipped. I think Gonzalez's ties to UNC helped him.
Uh-huh.
I believe him being a younger candidate, that's always been something that has been of interest, I feel, at least in my age bracket. I hear a lot of the time where people are like, we want younger candidates who are more tied to the experience of how it is now. And so I think that really helped him being on the younger end. And he was also pretty well spoken at most of the events. And so I think he just did a really good job of making himself look good and managed just to get those few people. Because, like you said, it was incredibly close.
Yeah, one of the closest races in the state.
It definitely. I remember, and that was my first time covering anything election-based, too. So it's like, I was on the phone so much that day, and poor Ryan, because I just called him every other hour, like the day after. I'm like, do you know anything yet? Like,
yeah,
no,
how long did it take to actually call that race? I can't remember. Do you remember?
I think it was either 2 or 3 days, because I know eventually one of my coworkers, I think Ann, was the one who took the story because it had gone on for so long that it was called on a day that I was off.
Right.
And so, but yeah, no, it was a very close race, and I think his connection to the county, I think the county also being generally fairly conservative, there was really a big factor into that, not to mention the youth and such. But again, it was close.
Well, let's shift gears to Congressional District 8, where Gabe Evans has been in office for about 6 months now and has frankly surprised us by just how in lockstep he's been with President Trump and Speaker Mike Johnson, despite the fact that he only won his election against Dr. Caraveo by a mere 2,449 votes, less than 1% of the total vote. Are you as surprised as we are that Evans has gone full MAGA despite such a narrow victory in 2024?
I'm not horribly surprised. I feel when he was campaigning, it was pretty clear that he was going to go that way. And so, I remember still before the election and whatnot, that Caraveo had some business meetups, and she did this walking tour of downtown businesses in Greeley. And meanwhile, instead of coming to doing some stuff there in Greeley as well, he had gone instead to go greet Trump when he was visiting the state. And so,
oh yeah, in Aurora, right, at that weird immigration rally. Yeah, that was the same time, huh?
Yeah, it was around the same time. And so, pretty much it was that time that I was like, he's probably going to be more on Trump. So I'm not horribly surprised. What I am more surprised about is just kind of the doubling down on it.
Yeah. I mean, there was that weird press conference he had with Lauren Boebert, who also represents a part of Weld County in Congress, right? Mm-hmm. That was on the Capitol steps. Didn't go according to plan. Did you cover that presser or have any thoughts on it?
I covered it in part just because they were talking about Medicaid stuff, and I was writing an article on that at the time. I wasn't there at the meeting.
Here's something I don't understand about what Evans is doing. I understand why he voted for it, because
they all voted for it.
They all voted for it. I don't understand why he keeps talking about it. What do you think he's trying to achieve?
Well, I think he's talking about it just because, one, it is a very complicated thing, and I think it's not necessarily a choice to keep talking about it as much as it is people keep asking him. And
well,
people
the press conference, he didn't have to have that press conference.
That's true. But I mean, he sort of did just because the bill was released soon and it's caused a lot of controversy, and it's going to be impactful to the people of Colorado by a good amount. And so as the congressman of the state, I feel he sort of had to have that, or at least have that discussion or acknowledge his part in it.
Are you getting a sense that people in the district, or in Greeley at least, are aware of the fact that this bill would slash Medicaid and SNAP benefits? Medicaid, I think 20-some% of the people in his district rely on Medicaid. Do you think people are aware of it?
I think they're becoming more aware of it. I would like to hope so. I've written a few articles about it.
Right.
I think they're becoming more aware of it because the big thing with all of that is that people in large are still thinking it's like, well, it's only going to affect immigrants or it's only going to affect the people who aren't working and whatnot. And it's not taking into account the kind of cascading ripple effect that's going to happen when that, or if that goes through. And, like I was at that clinic with Hickenlooper last week, and, they were telling me how, like, if it goes through, 25% of their patients will be off Medicaid.
Whoa.
And will increase prices for everyone else with
you
paid
have
insurance.
fewer patients, so the demand side of the equation gets out of whack. That's 1/4 of everybody who visits that clinic. That's going to screw with their finances in some way, shape, or form. You have to wonder, they're going to be cutting hours. They might shut down. This is what we worry about. It's like the ripple effect through the rural hospitals. 10 million people who currently have health insurance won't have it. And then states that have tried this work requirement experiment in the past, like I think Arkansas and Georgia, have found very, very bad results. It's mostly bureaucracy. It's mostly paperwork. It doesn't really help prevent anybody from gaming the system, quote unquote. And what it does is it just ends up creating bureaucratic nightmares for people. So we're pretty freaked out by this whole thing. We just can't believe that someone like Evans, who has the second highest number of people in the state on Medicaid, and I think the highest number of children enrolled in Medicaid, they can't prove work requirements. So we're pretty concerned that this is going to have some pretty dire effects on the people in the district.
Yeah, that's from the estimates and the stuff that I've seen and reported on. It is looking like it's going to be pretty rough. I don't remember what percent of Colorado it was that was on it. You might have said it. But yeah,
I think it's
the rural
1.2
hospital,
million people.
Yeah, I was like, it's a 1-something million people, which is it's a large portion. And like you said, the rural hospitals I feel are going to be the biggest hit, and it's going to be the most subtle hit because not many people realize, or maybe they do, but it doesn't seem like they realize how when they're sustained by people having Medicaid and being able to come and get that health care, like let me ground it a little bit better and do just that clinic, which was the Montfort Sunrise Family Clinic. They have a sliding price scale. And so there's people who are the 25% that are going to go off Medicaid. They will still be able to go there, but they won't be able to pay full price for anything. And so that's going to result in the hospital bringing in a lot less money. And it's going to make them really struggle. And a while back, I covered other rural hospitals who were also kind of saying the same thing, that this cutback, it's going to potentially bring them under. And if rural hospitals were to go away, next thing you know, people who can afford medical help or need medical help or emergency stuff, they're going to have to go hours to try and get to a hospital. And even then, the bigger hospitals are going to be hit pretty hard too. One of the Banner Health people, so yeah, also at the tour was the Banner Health CEO, Alan Quayles. And he was saying too that like this isn't going to just affect rural hospitals. It's going to do the bigger hospitals as well. He had reported at that tour that across their 3 hospitals, 70% of their patients are on Medicare or Medicaid. And so if the cuts come to pass, he was giving the estimate that they're going to lose like $7,000 per patient. And so it's going to have big ripple effects. Rural, it's going to impact rural. It might even shut down rural hospitals, leading to people having to go further. Right. And in the end, they're still going to have to pay more money, even at the hospitals, which are already expensive.
This is the thing. It's worse healthcare for fewer people that drives up costs for everybody. The big, beautiful bill, everyone. Let's talk about the politics a little bit more in the district. We're now up to 5 pretty legit declared Democratic candidates for CD8. The former incumbent Congresswoman Dr. Caraveo, of course, State Representative Manny Rutinel, State Treasurer Dave Young, former Teachers Union President Amy Baca-Olert, and State Rep Shannon Byrd are all declared to be running. There's also 2 other Democrats I never heard of, but I never heard of them, so we're not going to make you talk about them. Do you have any sense as to why this race is getting so crowded so early?
My guess would be, so it's probably just getting crowded so early just because of how controversial Gabe Evans has been so far. A lot of the articles that I've done have so far been stemming from somebody has an issue with Evans. And I think that's probably what's whipping people up. And it's making opponents like Caraveo, Bird, Rudinelli kind of see this as like, okay, you should probably get on the train early
Right.
and take advantage of this fervor while it's there and try to get some early support. That would be my guess. And that would make sense to me.
I don't want to ask you to make any predictions or anything because I know you're on the news side. That's not what you do. But
Yeah.
the Democratic candidates that are in this race so far, are there any of them that, to your mind, have a profile that might play better than others in Greeley?
I mean, I can't really make that many predictions on it. I don't know. Caraveo was here before, but Caraveo lost, but it's always been slim. And so it's hard to predict how people are going to go.
I mean, just in terms of their general bio, would you say anybody seems to fit just that area better? I don't mean the district overall. I mean, Dave Young's been there for a long time in Greeley. You think his name do you think people know him?
I really feel the only one that people know is going to be Caraveo just because she's been here before. And from what I've seen so far, there's not a lot of name recognition for the other people.
Right.
So I think in terms of that question, I think Caraveo is probably going to be the one that's going to be the biggest challenger here.
Uh-huh.
But that's really just based upon she's been here before and people know her.
I mean, this is our assumption too, right? Like, especially the more crowded the field gets, if there are like 3 or 4 or 5 candidates who actually make the ballot, you can only get 3 on through the assembly convention process, but you can collect signatures and then 2 more, 3 more, however many more can get on. It feels like a sort of akin to a Lauren Boebert type situation where like that field was so crowded when she moved to the 4th congressional district to run instead of the 3rd that she just got a plurality of the vote and won. It kind of feels like Dr. Caraveo's residual name ID can probably create a similar dynamic if she moves, she's the person that people have voted for before. She represented the district for 2 years. That's kind of how we feel too. Let me switch gears back to that press conference for a second, if we can. When Evans and Boebert held their little press conference on the Capitol step and they had to yell over a crowd that was booing at them and protesters, they said that the protesters were welcome to reach out to their district offices. But what's interesting, of course, is that based on your reporting, Evans's district office in Greeley has a sign on the door saying they don't maintain staff there. And we don't know if it's been open at any point. His only other district office is down in North Glen. What do you make of the fact that Gabe Evans doesn't really seem to have an open office in Greeley, which is one of the biggest cities in his district?
Are you hearing from more people who are concerned about how inaccessible his office apparently is?
Not recently, but that's kind of just been the tune the whole time. I think the sparkle has faded on that. Where it's now not become like a novel complaint to have because it's not changed. It's been this way the whole time. And so I feel like that complaint has really just become less of a complaint as more as just the accepted. Like there's not staff there.
I've never
trying
heard
to
of this
contact
before. I mean, in all the time I've worked in politics, I've never seen someone do this.
It's a bizarre move. Like, it is odd. I mean, it was a little bit problematic at first for me, just because it made it hard to reach him.
Right.
And so,
you're trying to get answers about what they're doing in D.C. for the people that you cover, and if they don't have an open office or if nobody answers the phone, like, how can you do that?
Yeah, that was definitely, I would say probably the first 3 months when I was doing any article on Evans, it was almost like an accepted, like, well, it's going to take me about a week to get an answer.
Huh.
But now we've progressed and we're in a better relationship, at least with his staff and such, that when the list came out last week, I was able just to call him up and they answered first ring. We're just like, we know about it. We'll send you something.
Right. Fair enough. So now they're getting used to it. Let me ask you
now they're a lot more familiar.
Let me ask you one final question kind of about the state of Colorado media right now. I kind of stumbled across this website the other day called Leadville Today. I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but it's an interesting one because I hadn't heard of it before. Leadville Democrat, I think, is the name of the actual paper in that district. But Here's the headline. Xcel Energy's $30 million wholesale market investment faces backlash over cost and uncertain benefits by Leslie Thomas. Down here, Xcel Energy's intention to join a short-term wholesale electric market has sparked significant criticism as various stakeholders challenge. I want to show you a story from the Colorado Sun that is sort of remarkably similar. Xcel's $30 million plan to join regional power pool panned for high cost, lack of benefit.
I thought I recognized this.
Energy's plan to join a short-term wholesale electric market is drawing fire from critics. This Leadville Today website appears to be like an AI site that takes existing reporting and just repurposes it. This Leslie Thomas person does not seem to exist. I couldn't find her anywhere. The reporter here. So this is like back to the question about local journalism. Like, how are you guys thinking about AI and something like this that like appears to be a news site, but maybe isn't, and it's just kind of generating content? Like, do you see this as a threat to the overall project of local journalism, or how are you guys processing AI's role in Colorado's media?
I haven't heard too much about discussions regarding to like what we're going to be doing about AI, but I think anytime where you're starting to get like AI, that's another nuanced, kind of complicated question, because on one hand, part of me is just like, well, if it's just taking from other news sources, that's not cool, but at least the message is probably getting out further, maybe. So
Fair
like,
enough.
the information is spreading, which is a good thing, but it's not good for, my job.
Well,
Right.
This is what we're worried about. I mean, like, Colorado has this sort of like uniquely good and currently existing local media landscape, and if it can just be replaced by some website that just takes and rewords or rephrases articles, like it's kind of concerning for the overall media landscape. Like, I don't think it's going to replace, I don't know, like Kyle Clark tomorrow, but like in a couple of years, I don't know if you've seen like the advances in AI video technology. That's freaking me out pretty bad.
Oh yeah, AI is something that's going to just keep on progressing and progressing and progressing. And so right now, no, it's an issue right now, but I don't think the AI in regards to reporting is necessarily going to replace the role of a reporter, because it's not like the AI is taking a little robot body and calling people up, asking questions, hitting the pavement and whatnot. It's only just going to take what's already been published and just spread it out wider. But I mean, who knows what the future holds in regards to that? Maybe it will. Maybe businesses will start receiving automated robot phone calls, in which case that would be really freaky.
I can't rule it out. For listeners, what are you working on right now? What should we be keeping our eye out for in the pages of the Trib with your byline over the next couple weeks?
So yeah, next couple weeks. So right now, big things in Greeley. Like I said, I try to stay local, but yeah, we've got the Greeley Stampede is coming up, and so I have an article that will be coming out closer around that time that is talking about economic impacts that brings to the town and the effects that it has on businesses. And kind of echoing that, I just did an article yesterday for our business section regarding the changes that are happening in downtown Greeley and the effects that the civic campus is going to have, that the city is proposing, what's going to happen if the Weld County Courthouse moves out of downtown and kind of takes $0.4 million of revenue it generates for the city out of there.
Huh.
And of course, the biggest thing that's always going on and talked about frequently in Greeley is the West Greeley Cascadia project with their new home for the Colorado Eagles and such. And so just how all of that is going to impact the future of downtown Greeley.
Well, thank you so much for your reporting, and thank you so much for sharing that. Thanks for coming on the show. It was awesome to have you. Tyler Duncan, the government reporter for the Greeley Tribune. Thanks for coming on the Get More Smarter podcast, man. It was great talking to you.
Great talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tyler. Well, in solidarity with Elon Musk, not really, but viewers will notice that I've got
what
a
happened to
black
your
eye.
face?
It was an underground kickboxing tournament fight for democracy. How about that?
Who won? Did democracy win?
I didn't win, but
That sucks.
I don't know if democracy did. The short version of the real story is I fought the wall and the wall won.
I'm glad you're okay.
I'm fine. Well, let's start with a sad story. And there was an attack in Boulder over the last weekend. An Egyptian national used an improvised flamethrower to attack a group of Jewish people conducting a regular walk meant to draw attention to Israeli hostages in Gaza.
And American hostages, by the way. There are still
Oh, and American
hostages
hostages.
there.
That's right. At least 15 people were injured, including a dog, and some of those injured pretty seriously. There's a lot to get into here, but we'll start with the fact that rhetoric matters.
Yeah, it's been a weird time to be a Jewish Democrat for the last year and a half, going around normally progressive spaces with people who have signs that say things like "globalize the Intifada," which I'm not sure what other definition there could be of that particular slogan that is some lefty, far lefty folks are fond of using than "please hurt and kill Jewish people all over the world." You saw this in the firebombing of Governor Josh Shapiro's mansion, the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. You saw this in the murder of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington, D.C., where I am right now, just a few weeks ago. And you saw this attack on peaceful demonstrators who don't have a political agenda. They're not talking about the war. They're not justifying Israel's actions in the war. They're literally simply trying to draw attention to the fact that hundreds of days into this thing, there are still people being held captive by Hamas. And this person decided to attack them and try and kill them. And we know for a fact that he tried to get a gun so he could conduct a mass shooting, but was blocked by Colorado's gun laws. So thankful for that.
Yeah, more on that in a minute.
Was still able to carry out this heinous assault on peaceful Jewish protesters, one of whom was a Holocaust survivor in their 80s.
Republicans, as you probably won't be surprised to hear, including Congressman Gabe Evans, are trying to use the tragedy to complain about illegal immigration.
I really despise this guy.
Yeah, I'm totally on board there. Evans said the attack was the fault of the Colorado Democrats for policies limiting contact with immigration and customs enforcement. That proved to be wrong. More in a minute. And then there was Aurora City Council member Danielle Jurinsky. She's a Republican who desperately wants to be considered one of Colorado's top MAGA lunatics. Her rant on the subject was so over the top, as Kyle Clark of 9 News explains.
On Jared Polis, Jenna Griswold, Michael Bennett, Phil Weiser. Shame on every single one of you who have made the Democratic Party your religion. Shame on you. You're not Jewish. You're a Democrat. Nothing brings me to tears like this than watching Jews put their dedication to a demonic cult, the Democratic Party, which has made crime legal, murder legal, rape legal. You had better be on your knees praying to God for forgiveness for your behavior, because you're not just anti-American. You yourselves are anti-Semitic.
And that's like obviously the craziest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah,
no one gets to decide who's Jewish, by the way.
Right.
Only individual human beings get to decide whether or not they themselves are Jewish. It's not up to a low-ranking city councilor in a minor American city to decide those things.
And you can disagree about policies about, sentences for different crimes and things like that. But obviously, nobody decriminalized murder. That's silly.
I mean, the "you're not Jewish" thing is fucked up. Like, I'm a Democrat. I'm a Jew. I don't appreciate other people trying to define who is and who is not. It's just insane. Like, we are lucky in Colorado, actually, to have a large portion of Jewish representation in our state and statewide offices. That's a nice thing. And it's part of why I think the reaction from at least Democrats to this heinous attack made us all feel a lot better. Like, it's not, you don't feel safe right now as a Jewish person in America, unfortunately. It's something I never thought I would experience, but it's been that way for a while now. And it's what Governor Polis and A.G. Weiser and Senator Bennett and, SOS Griswold and our other members of Congress who are not Republicans said about this tragedy, and we'll show some stuff from some other allies in a minute, really did actually make me feel quite a bit better. The Denver Post has dedicated a huge amount of space in their opinion section to Jewish leaders over the last week. I really appreciate what they're doing too. And anybody with brain and a soul is processing this, I think, correctly, no matter where you stand on the war, the conflict, all that kind of stuff. But Jerinsky is like way fucking over the top.
Now, this is just her saying, "Look at me." I mean, that's all it was.
That's what it feels like. And, this is not the first time, right? Like during the, alleged Tren de Aragua nightmare in Aurora, like did a lot of pointing at herself in Trump world and MAGA world, trying to make herself a star. She went on Dr. Phil to basically spread the same lies about crime. It should go without saying, but obviously crime, rape, and murder are not legal in Colorado under any definition. So,
of course, these attacks on Democrats turned out to be completely untrue. Here's a report from, ironically, Fox 31 Denver.
That breaking news first on Fox 31 as we see new pictures of the alleged Boulder attacker being hauled away by cops moments after the firebomb attack on protesters Sunday. We're learning exclusive new details about his failed efforts to buy a gun.
Fox 31 learning Mohammed Sabri Solomon applied to buy a handgun in Colorado Springs but was denied. And we learned ICE officials were alerted that Solomon, who was in the country illegally, was trying to buy a firearm. Fox 31's Hannah Powers is the first to report on the information that you'll see only on Fox 31 tonight. She's joining us live in Boulder this evening. Hannah?
Hi, Christine and Jeremy. Well, that's right. Like you just mentioned, tonight, officials are confirming that the alleged attacker, Mohammed Solomon, attempted to purchase that gun at a sporting goods store in Colorado Springs late last year. He would have filled out a form that looked just like this one, but the sale never went through, and that's because the state's background check system blocked it. And tonight, we're explaining to you how that system works and why his case was flagged. Fox 31 learning exclusively tonight that accused attacker Mohammed Sabri Solomon went to this massive sporting goods store in Colorado Springs trying to buy a gun late last year, but was shut down. A Colorado Bureau of Investigation spokesperson telling me Solomon went to the Shields All Sports in Colorado Springs on November 22nd for a handgun. He was denied based on the state's InstaCheck system and the National Instant Criminal Background Check, or NICS. Then weeks later, he was denied a concealed handgun permit. The denials triggered an electronic notification to immigration authorities. And we know from the affidavit, officials believe that failed gun purchase may have been a turning point, with the suspect allegedly building Molotov cocktails instead.
For instance, here this question's asking you your country of citizenship. You see there's United States and other. If you check other, you have to specify what country you're a citizen of, as well as provide the number on the visa.
When you try to buy a gun in Colorado, the process starts with this federal form known as Form 4473, which asks about criminal history, mental health, and immigration status.
You can only legally buy a firearm if you're a legal U.S. resident.
In Colorado, that check runs through the state's InstaCheck system, which is run by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and taps into a federal database.
All we do is submit the customer's information, their ID number, any information they need, and then they get back to us with approved, denied, or delayed.
Once the form is submitted, the check usually takes just minutes, but if there's anything in the system that raises a red flag, the sale is halted immediately.
Unfortunately, you've been denied, and we can't complete that sale.
And that's exactly what happened in this case. Tonight, CBI's spokesperson telling Fox 31, Colorado's firearm background check system worked as designed when it comes to the actions of accused Boulder terrorism suspect Mohammed Sabri Solomon. And while CBI doesn't comment on individual immigration status, they confirm applications can be denied on that basis. And in those cases, ICE is notified.
It seems like it works just fine. I don't have a problem with the process. Also, for the record, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to buy a gun either. You have to be a legal U.S. resident.
And we did reach out to ICE late tonight to see if they could confirm for us that they ever received a notification from CBI that would confirm that this gun purchase ever attempted to take place. We have not heard back yet. Of course, once we get those details, we will keep you updated. For now, live tonight in Boulder, I'm Hannah Powers, Fox 31.
Hannah, thank you.
Want to say that the audio difficulties over there were not ours. That was
no. But here's the thing that Republicans like Gabe Evans have been saying with Colorado's refusal to work with ICE and immigration officials. That's the reason this happened. No, our background gun check system worked.
Yep.
It
it's
triggered,
the reason why he wasn't able to make this so much worse.
Right. it triggered a notification to immigration officials. We don't know what happened at that point, but it's just wrong. It's
also
factually
Donald
wrong.
Trump's immigration department that decided not to immediately go and do whatever to this guy. So, like, you want to blame somebody? Go ahead, Gabe.
Right. But it's factually wrong to say that whatever Democrats did in Colorado is the reason this guy was able to commit this crime. No, it's not true.
Factually wrong and Gabe Evans seem to go hand in hand a lot these days.
Meanwhile, Colorado Democrats, led by Senator Michael Bennet and Congressman Joe Neguse, have produced a resolution in Congress condemning the attacks.
I want to start by playing this interview of friend of the pod, Joe Neguse, with friend of my dad, not joking, Al Sharpton.
No kidding.
Yeah, they went to high school together.
Congressman, let me raise this question. As we deal with the rise of hate crimes, anti-Semitism, racism, and all, we struggle with the fact that you have to be against any hate crime, any violence, or you can't really be against when it comes to your group, which is why many of us in the black community stood with the Jewish leaders when there was the attack, the killing of the two just a couple of weeks ago there in Washington. Talk about how the issue of trying to resolve a two-state solution or some kind of peace and dealing with the fact that the kidnapped should not be kidnapped and people shouldn't be starving in Gaza, how that balance is disturbed when you have someone like this that takes violence, because then it polarizes and causes something that is not going to even help the cause that they claim to believe in.
Yeah, I would say this, and it's good to see you, Rev. I think that there is a risk in moments like this of overcomplicating the analysis that's required by citizens and by lawmakers alike. To me, it's very simple. This is about the safety of my constituents, of Jewish brothers and sisters whom I represent and whom I serve in my district in Colorado, who right now are living in fear because members of their community were just firebombed 72 hours ago. And from my perspective, the focus has got to be on finding ways to keep them safe, given that we know that what happened on Sunday, this terrorist attack, wasn't in isolation. It followed, just as you mentioned, the murder of two Jewish community members here in Washington, D.C., in our nation's capital, staff at the Israeli embassy. So I don't think the Congress has done enough, to be candid and frank. I think we have to do more. And the Boulder community is a resilient community. Make no mistake. We will care for our neighbors. We'll stand for the community. We'll condemn all types of hate and hateful rhetoric. But in this instance, I would just I would lean in on this particular point, that I think we have to do more regarding anti-Semitism, which to me continues to metastasize.
I mean, well said. This is the point, right? This isn't about the war. It's not about the conflict. It's not about your particular views on what a foreign government is doing or not doing. This is about increases in violence and threats against the Jewish community in Colorado. And there have been increases in violence and threats against all sorts of folks ever since Trump was reelected. There were rape threats from like douchebags on the internet saying insane shit like "your body, my choice" that happened immediately after Trump was elected. There have been increases in attacks on the Muslim community. There have been increases in racism against all sorts of people of color, and especially in persecutions against the LGBTQ community, especially trans folks. That's all true, but right now there are Jews being murdered in the streets and attempted to be murdered in the streets. And I really do appreciate that Congressman Neguse is able to state so clearly that this is like a priority for him, and to make sure that like there's not just this continuing scourge of anti-Semitism, violent anti-Semitism throughout the world.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, Neguse and Senator Bennet are pushing through a resolution condemning these attacks, condemning anti-Semitism. It's a pretty standard condemnation language. Republicans Jeff Hurd and Jeff Crank joined on to the resolution.
Which is the easiest thing you can do, by the way, is just to like show bipartisan solidarity at a moment like this when people in your state are attacked, no matter what your politics are.
But Republicans Lauren Boebert and Gabe Evans refused to sign on. Evans is apparently working on his own resolution that praises the Trump administration for getting tough on illegal immigration, following this week's announcement of a travel ban on people from several countries. It's disgusting.
Yeah, he's trying to politicize the tragedy. He's trying to score points with MAGA land, and he's trying to raise his profile among the most despicable people here. This guy was kind of cute and funny for a little while, where it was like, oh, look at this doofus who like stumbled his way into Congress. Like, no, gloves are off, buddy. Like, sorry, this is not cool. You are not representing your people well, and you are not going to be there for much longer.
Evans could sign both resolutions. There's no reason he couldn't.
Yeah, but then this wouldn't be about standing with a community in solidarity who was just attacked. It wouldn't be a bootlicking exercise where he, last episode, I think we talked about the only two books this guy reads are the Bible and The Art of the Deal, right?
Yep,
So
yep.
The only thing he cares about is getting, doggy treats from Donald Trump in MAGA land, and this is just another piece of evidence for that.
All right, let's talk a little bit about dear leader Trump. The big story lately has been the ugly divorce between President Trump and billionaire Elon Musk. Musk recently left his service in the government as the head of the Doge nonsense. He might have been feeling sensitive given that reports increasingly show that Doge cut very little of the 2 to 3 trillion Musk promised.
This is one of those funny things where it's like the Department of Government Efficiency is neither a department nor in the government, nor apparently about efficiency because it cost a lot more money than it saved, didn't it?
Estimates are that it cost at least $135 billion in this fiscal year alone. Meanwhile, and Doge are claiming credit for about $160 billion total in savings. Those numbers sound different, but remember the $135 billion that it will cost Americans is just this fiscal year.
And this is also not calculating any of the lasting damage that all of the destructive cuts and mass firings, hundreds of thousands of federal employees encountered during this misadventure, right?
Right. So after officially leaving his Doge post, Musk started attacking Trump's big, beautiful bullshit bill, calling it a disgusting abomination laden with pork. He was also unhappy that the bill eliminates incentives for purchasing electric vehicles, which would, of course, impact his Tesla business. The result was an all-out social media thumb war that could have serious ramifications for both that legislation and Trump's credibility with a portion of his base.
Yeah, this is pretty funny. Everything is kind of nuts. All this shit is happening on Twitter, and like these people are just so fucking weird and sad and insane. But Trump also had something to say about it, didn't he?
Yeah, here's what sort of kicked off the intense back and forth round.
But if they picked him, I would have won Pennsylvania. I won it by a lot. But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate because that's billions and billions of dollars, and it really is unfair. We want to have cars of all types. Electric, we want to have electric, but we want to have a gasoline, combustion. We want to have different. We want to have hybrids. We want to have we want to be able to sell everything. And when that was cut, and Congress wanted to cut it, he became a little bit different, and I can understand that. But he knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody, and he never had a problem until right after he left. And if you saw the statements he made about me, which I'm sure you can get very easily, it's very fresh on tape, he said the most beautiful things about me. And he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next. But I've helped Elon a lot.
It was next, yeah. Musk got replied on the website formerly known as Twitter that he never saw this bill and no one showed it to him. I'm not sure why anyone would have because he's not in the government, but he fired back that it's an obvious lie that Elon was wearing thin in the White House. Trump responded saying the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. This then prompted Musk to send a message saying that it's time to drop the really big bomb. Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the reason they have not been made public. And then he said, in response to a post by somebody saying Trump should be impeached and J.D. Vance should replace him, Musk retweeted that saying, yes.
Going great. It's going great. We could have had the nice, smart black lady who was going to build all the houses and not have any of this bullshit.
This is having ripples everywhere, of course. Before we get into that, I really enjoyed how Fox News is prioritizing this battle. Here's Sean Hannity.
But we begin tonight with a flurry of activity today at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And yes, let not your heart be troubled. I will address the battle between President Trump and Elon Musk. I know it's of such great international importance. But first, there is fresh scrutiny surrounding Joe Biden and a hard-working auto pen. Take a look. But we begin tonight with a flurry of activity today at 16.
People are so full of shit. It's unbelievable.
But yeah, the world's most powerful man and the world's richest man are feuding. But first, let's talk about an auto pen.
From years and years ago.
Right.
Joe Biden's not president, by the fucking way.
And here's the Indiana Republican Senator Jim Banks on CNN really trying to smooth things over and not succeeding.
Because President Trump is working directly with senators. He's taken the high ground with Elon and the back and forth online. He's more focused on passing the big, beautiful bill to support working class families in this country. That's what matters most.
Well, I don't know that he's taken the high road. I mean, he's accused Elon Musk of going crazy, and he's threatened to take away all of his government contracts, prompting Musk to say he's going to cancel one of the SpaceX contracts. But let's turn back to the
because
I do hope all of those contracts get canceled.
Yeah. This is putting, as I mentioned, congressional Republicans in a weird spot, including Gabe Evans. Musk contributed nearly $1 million to helping Evans get elected in 2024. Evans then told the New York Times that he was glad Musk is complaining, I guess. Quote, here's Evans, quote, "We're the party of free thought. We'll get to the point of... Right. We'll get to the point of being able to address some of his concerns about the legislation, what the bill actually does. I have a good report with my district. I'm always open to having a dialogue, but I'm not too worried about it."
He has absolutely no rapport with his district. He won't open his offices. No one's home. No, he doesn't do town hall meetings with anybody other than telephones run by oil and gas companies. This is all such a fucking heinous lie. This guy.
And he does not win without Musk's help.
No, that's 1,000 votes that go the other way, right?
Yeah. So what does this all mean? Trump picked a fight with a guy who we would have said years ago buys ink by the barrel, but now it's social media. Musk's comments about Jeffrey Epstein are a concern for Trump, I think, but I'd be more worried about his apparent support of impeachment so that Vice President J.D. Vance could take over.
I mean, J.D. Vance is like looking at this as like an episode of fucking House of Cards.
Oh, yeah, he's licking his chops.
Absolutely, 100%. Like, he's looking at these, when do I get to make my move?
And as for the budget bill, Republicans now need to decide if they're more afraid of Trump promising primary challenges or Musk pledging to use his vast fortune to make sure their chief backers of the bill lose whatever race they run in 2026.
It's almost like we could have seen this coming. In fact, we fucking did. On January 29th, we put up an episode with Cornell professor Tom Popinski where he basically predicted all of this would happen in some way, shape, or form. Yep. I think the only thing that's even remotely surprising is that it happened so quickly. The honeymoon did not last very long.
No, it didn't. Speaking of the big, beautiful bullshit bill, legislation got more bad news this week from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. It released updated estimates as the bill prepares to be discussed in the Senate, showing 10.9 million more people will be uninsured in 2034 because of changes to health care. The Budget Office estimates the bill would cut taxes by $3.7 trillion and cut spending by $1.2 trillion.
And for those of you trying to do the math at home, those numbers don't add up.
And most analysts expect the bill would add around $3 trillion to the national debt. So,
going great.
House Speaker Mike Johnson is getting ridiculous on the bill. Take a listen to this nonsense.
2017, except this time it's on steroids. Well, it is worth noting that some budget experts say that in 2017, actually, the CBO was pretty right when you adjusted for inflation. But let me read you something that you said back in 2021 about the CBO. This was in relation to a Democratic bill. You said the CBO has confirmed this bill adds nearly $400 billion to the deficit, contrary to the White House's claim that the bill is paid for. So do you only believe the CBO when a Democrat is president, Mr. Speaker?
No, this is very easy to explain. The CBO sometimes gets projections correct, but they're always off every single time when they project economic growth. They always underestimate the growth that will be brought about by tax cuts.
That's because it never fucking happened.
Right.
Look,
It's
when
never
we
happened.
did this in 2017, the first 2 years of the Trump administration, we literally brought about the greatest economy in the history of the world, not just the U.S. Because we got the government off the backs of the people who create the jobs, and we allowed hardworking Americans to have more money in their pocket that they could take home. We're doing that again. Remember, in this big, beautiful bill, the reason we call it that is because there's benefits for everybody. It's geared for hardworking Americans. Lower.
This guy just fucking lies with such reckless abandon. It is like
Jesus,
almost impressive. It's almost impressive if it weren't so goddamn depressing.
And then later on Twitter, Johnson wrote, data confirms Americans on Medicaid who can work but refuse to work spend much of their time actually playing video games and watching TV, unquote. What? What data? Who has data that says that?
Yeah, they're surveying people and they're saying, haha, sucker, I'm on Medicaid and I'm just playing Elden Ring.
Right. Friend of the pod, Alan Franklin, has a reply on here that shows up first to Mike Johnson. He says, quote, some arguments warrant a thoughtful response. This one does not. You are an asshole.
Way to go, Al.
Meanwhile, let's talk about some other policy updates in the Trump administration. We talked last week about a list of sanctuary jurisdictions released by the Department of Homeland Security that was riddled with errors and strange inclusions. That list has now disappeared from the DHS website.
Like they used ChatGPT to do their homework and then it turned out to be wrong and then they took it down.
That's right. Also, as we enter the annual hurricane season in the southern United States, you won't be comforted to know that the new head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, David Richardson, said in a staff meeting he had no idea that we had a hurricane season. There are no words.
I'm speechless, literally. I don't know what to say. I can't believe these fucking idiots are in charge of everything. God forbid something really bad actually happens. I mean, there's tornadoes and hurricanes ripping through the country. This will be the first hurricane season under this new administration. And the fact that the guy doesn't know, I mean, they're named hurricanes every single year. We talk about them a lot. How could you not know?
Right. All the time. As long as I can remember, this has been a news story every summer.
I have a journal entry in my sixth grade agenda from school that I just found the other day that said rained out due to Hurricane Floyd. Do you remember Hurricane Floyd?
Right.
I do.
Right. You notice how those hurricanes don't ever come around Christmas? That's because there's a hurricane. Jesus. And finally, on this point, Health and Human Services Director Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is determined to kill us all. As the Washington Post reports, he's pulling $760 million in funding that was being used to develop a bird flu vaccine. Why?
Because he does not believe in vaccines, because he's a lunatic conspiracy theorist, and he should not only not be in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services, he should be nowhere near the government, but here we are.
And then one last part on Trump. I got to admit, I did not see this coming. President Trump is openly saying he might pardon Diddy.
Of course.
As the
because
Washington...
it's like all he cares about is attention and headlines and inserting himself into whatever popular conversation is happening these days and siding with criminals.
Sean Diddy Combs is on trial for federal racketeering and sex trafficking. Trump, as quoted by the Washington Post, said, I haven't spoken to him in years. He used to really like me a lot. I think when I ran for politics, that relationship busted up from what I read.
When I ran for politics.
And I might pardon the guy known for having lots of
abuse,
terrible sex abuse parties. Great.
Going great.
All right, let's update the 2026 election, which we seem to have to do every week now.
Things are getting crowded in our 8th congressional district, as well as the Attorney General's race, with a couple new entrants to both this week.
Yep. There are now 5 Democrats in the race to take on Republican Gabe Evans in the 8th congressional district.
I understand the temptation.
Yeah.
Whoever wins the primary is going to beat this clown. It is very obviously going to happen.
And the numbers change, as we'll talk about in a second. There are State Representative Manny Ruttenell, former Congressman Yadira Caraveo, State Representative Shannon Byrd. We talked about them before. Also joining the race now are former CEA President Amy Baca-Olert and friend of the pod, State Treasurer Dave Young.
Friend of the pod and current possessor of the world's smallest gun.
That's right. We talked last week about a poll showing Caraveo a significantly better name ID than other candidates, which was not unexpected. But as we've talked about in races that attract this many candidates, we talked about this in 2024 with the 4th Congressional District Republican primary. When you start to get a lot of candidates on the ballot, some of the standard tactics go out the window. The winner of the Democratic primary in this race might only need about 10,000 votes, which is the equivalent of a city council race in many places.
I still think the more candidates in the race, the better for Caraveo, because she just has that existing base of support, and that I think it was 4 times the name ID of anybody else in the race, including friend of the pod, Dave Young. And we'll see what happens. This is why you run campaigns. You have a year between now and the primary next June. And I think we're going to have a Get More Smarter primary, Jason. I think we're going to have everybody on the pod to talk about why they should be the person to take on Gabe Evans.
I think that's a good idea. The bread sandwich has drawn a primary challenge in Congressional District 3. Former state Republican Party Vice Chair Hope Scheppelman, who was under Dave Williams' reign, is challenging her in a Republican primary. She's got one of those silly 3-word marketing slogan things.
Conservative, constitutional, Colorado first.
Oh, that's 4 words. She's screwing it up. Oh, wait, there's 3.
Truth, strength, service.
So dumb. I hate that so much. It's so stupid.
As of the last time I checked, the website nohopeforcolorado.com was still available.
And the race for Attorney General, a woman named Hetal Doshi has joined the field. I admit I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I have a few friends who are close with her, and a buddy of mine is actually working on her campaign. With 4 declared Democrats at the moment, it looks like we also need a Get More Smarter Attorney General primary. So we'll be inviting onto the show to make their case to you all. Hetal is a first-generation Indian American and Denver resident. She previously served from 2014 to 2022 as the Assistant U.S. Attorney for Colorado before becoming a Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Justice. From 2022 to 2025, she led a lot of antitrust cases against Apple, Google, Ticketmaster, and RealPage, that algorithmic rent-setting company that Jared Polis vetoed the bill about that we talked about on the last episode. Basically trying to break up corporate power and protect consumers, and then starting in 2014, she served on then President Obama's financial fraud task force investigating white-collar crimes dating back to the Great Recession. So we all know that Attorney General candidate and current Secretary of State Jenna Griswold set a record for first-day fundraising. Then David Seligman, another candidate, broke that record and set another record for first-day fundraising. And I have it on pretty good authority that, believe it or not, Hetal also set a new record topping Seligman's first day fundraising total, and we will see what that looks like when these reports come out.
It also sounds like former House Speaker Crisanta Duran is looking for an off-ramp already, not surprising.
But I keep getting text messages with her picture in it sent to me about why she'd be such a good Attorney General.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think she's getting a lot of traction there. She's been talking about running for a state Senate seat in Denver instead. Who knows? I mean, she's kind of all over the place. And there's also a Democrat Andres Carrera, who worked on former political director for Mayor Mike Johnston. He's announced that he's going to run in Senate District 34, so that could be complicated for Duran.
This is the district currently held by friend of the pod, State Senator Julie Gonzalez.
That's right. Okay, let's do a couple of quick hits and then we'll roll out of here. Colorado House Republicans are still confused about what it is they do. Best friend of the pod, Christy Powell, points out on X that another ridiculous comment from the communications folks for House Republicans has aged poorly. House Republicans sent out a tweet saying, "New law alert, Senate Bill 2527, sponsored by Representative Ryan Gonzalez, creates a work group to explore trauma-informed school safety drills. With student mental health a top priority, this bill aims to prepare students without causing harm."
I mean, hey, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. But as best friend of the pod, Christy Powell, points out, every single House Republican except for Ryan Gonzalez voted against this bill.
Way to go.
These people are so stupid.
Did the comm staffer lose a bet or something? God.
Oh, my God. We have an update on Iowa Senator Joni Ernst. Last episode, we noted that she was getting blasted for saying that we're all going to die eventually in response to a town hall question about Medicaid cuts. Ernst later sort of tried to make an apology, but it turned into something actually even grosser. Take a listen.
Yeah, if you haven't had a chance to watch this horrible video I'm about to show you, I apologize in advance, but it is unfortunately mandatory viewing right now and listening for our audio folks. So take a listen to this.
Hello, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement that I made yesterday at my town hall. I was in the process of answering a question that had been asked by an audience member when a woman who was extremely distraught screamed out from the back corner of the auditorium, "People are going to die." And I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well. But for those that would like to see eternal and everlasting life, I encourage you to embrace my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, indeed.
What a horrible person.
It seems like she's walking through a fucking cemetery. Did you pick that up?
Yeah.
Like, what a troll. What a schmuck. If you're somebody in Iowa, just like a normal conservative.
You're a U.S. Senator. What are you doing?
Just being a monster. This is what they do now, Jason. They fucking hate everybody. They're cynical monsters. They don't belong in public service. They don't belong in office.
Wanted to play some audio from a recent committee hearing in which Democratic Representative Madeline Dean from Pennsylvania hammered Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. There are two parts to this. First, here she is explaining that a trade deficit, which is the basis of Trump's ridiculous tariff war, is actually not a bad thing.
It's one of the memes are sort of like, you don't run a trade deficit with Domino's when you order a pizza, you fucking idiots.
You know when this country actually had a trade surplus, Secretary?
We've had trade surpluses. The president likes to speak about before.
No, historically. When did we have a trade surplus? I'm not talking about the president. Historically.
I think early, about 100 years ago.
It was the Great Depression. It was a sign of what was going on. It was during the Great Depression. That's a direction none of us wants to go.
And then we have the banana. Dean closed with talking about, this is so good. She closed talking about a 10% tariff on bananas, which Americans buy by the billions every year, which led to a hilarious final exchange.
The lady's
Would
expired.
you mind, Mr. Chairman, if I make one quick comment to the end? Would that be okay?
I'm sorry?
Would you mind if I make one quick comment to the representative?
Sure. Please.
There's no uncertainty if you build in America and you produce your product in America, there will be no tariff.
We can't
so
produce
the concept
bananas in
of
America.
building in America and paying no tariff
We cannot-
is very, very clear.
We cannot
Fighting for
build
imports
bananas
is
in
not
America.
The time of the gentlelady has expired.
We cannot build bananas in America. That's so good.
That's kind of an all-timer. Yeah, she's great.
That's fantastic. All right, let's go to our FAFO of the week, our fuck around and find out. Here's a woman in Missouri who says, quote, I voted for Donald Trump and so did practically everyone here, but no one voted to deport moms. Vanessa
You all voted to deport moms.
Yeah,
Every one of you were responsible for this.
She's apparently upset that one of her friends from church was deported because she thought it was going to be only gang members deported.
This is literally the Leopards Ate My Face subreddit, but it's just unimaginable cruelty. I thought this was going to hurt people I didn't like. That's why I voted for him. But it hurt somebody I do like, and that's bad. Now I'm sad about it. Do you think they're going to vote any differently next time?
No, of course not. And finally, our gibberish of the week. President Trump has uncovered something big. Here's the Jimmy Kimmel Show.
Is spreading deranged stories about his predecessor being a robot. Hey, Republicans, remember when you were very concerned Joe might not have the mental acuity to be president? Come get your guy, because he thinks Biden was executed and replaced by a clone, a robotic clone. I mean, if your dad was saying stuff like this, you'd start looking for an assisted living facility.
Oh, that's so good. Okay.
And now we got some listener feedback for this week. This email comes to us from a former Coloradan who's now living in Maryland, which is unfortunately where I kind of am right now. Adam writes, hi, Jason and Ian. I lived in Denver and then Leadville. Proudly voted for Brittany. Thanks for that. For about a decade and then moved back east to Maryland a little over a year ago. Crazy to go from the Rockies to the East Coast, I know, but it led to a wife and a baby and being near family. So as much as I miss Colorado, the move has been worth it. However, I'm having a hard time finding news about Maryland politics. There's no podcast like yours, but even finding Maryland-specific news can be tough since it's generally overshadowed by Washington, D.C. news or the federal government. I learned so much about Colorado from listening to you two, and now I feel very out of the loop in my own state. It's been a bit of a shot in the dark, but wasn't sure if you had any advice for learning more about politics in Maryland and keeping up with the local news. Well, first of all, Adam, thank you very much for the nice email. We really appreciate that. And second of all, we looked and tried to find if there were any Maryland podcasts out there in the world. We found something called the Conduit Street Politics or podcast, which is sort of a project of the Maryland Association of Counties. And then we found this, which is a podcast that's apparently called The Bottom Line, with one of the former Republican governors. I did not know Maryland had former Republican governors. Did you?
Yeah. Well, maybe at some point in time.
Right. And it is apparently a howling nest of fucking insanity. It is like the most MAGA weird shit. Bob and Kendall Ehrlich. And I want to point out that it's got 2.3 stars in terms of its average rating. We suggested Adam might want to listen to it when he's in the gym if he needs something to get pumped. And he said he might take that under advisement.
All right. That does it for us this week.
The Get More Smarter podcast is a production of ColoradoPolls.com and the Bighorn Company. Your hosts are me, Ian Silveri, and America's dad,
Jason Bain,
who also managed to figure out how to engineer and produce this thing despite having a black eye. Megan makes the video version. Thanks a lot, Megan. She does a lot of other stuff, too. Breakmaster Cylinder made the theme song. Get your shots while you still can. Protect your trans kids, your autistic kids, your immigrant kids, and any other kids in your life. It's getting weird out there. Please send us emails, messages, leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, comments on Spotify, or reply to our post on Blue Sky. We would read it on the air. Don't you want to be famous? Like Adam's email. Thanks for that. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get the podcast. Rate the show and leave us a review if you got more smarter. It really helps a lot. Find us at getmoresmarter.com, where you can sign up for bonus content in our Substack. And please send all your emails to Angry Rants, getmoresmarter.com, other stuff to Ian at getmoresmarter.com, and other stuff to Jason at getmoresmarter.com. Thank you so much to Tyler Duncan, our guest today of the esteemed Greeley Tribune, and thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.